thank you everyone for being here today. Fantastic to have so many on live to listen to this discussion. So looking forward to it. How's everything at Equals going, Bobby?
Oh, it's great. We've the last week or so we've been on fire, closing new customers, bringing people on.
Nice.
Yeah, it's an exciting time.
I saw your new launch on Monday, was it? The JavaScript and Python connections.
Yeah. I've dreamed of that launch for a long time, so I'm really excited to have that in the world.
That's exciting. Good to see. Let me just see.
How are things at Intercom?
Good. Things are good. Our startup program is going well. Our team's doing well. So, yeah, I think everyone's probably getting back towards the end of summer now and looking at let's get things moving in Q3, you know?
For sure.
Checking on Bobby Stapleton there. Give me a second. I'll just slowly start on the introduction for our guest today. So first of all, our CX for Growth webinar series, we've been running from the startups team here. It's really a casual interview style focused on different customer experience topics every month. And really our objective is to help you drive growth in your business. So I suppose grab a coffee and settle in. We're joined by Bobby Pinero from Equals, and we will be joined shortly by Bobby Stapleton from Intercom. Today's topic is focused on demonstrating the ROI of support. We'll look at the foundational support metrics, then how you begin to demonstrate the ROI as you scale, and then finally how the most advanced teams are learning from it. So, hi Bobby, how are you?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good to see you, Bobby.
Good to see you too, Bobby. This is a Bobby chat. It's gonna be fun.
Just like the old days.
Exactly.
That's it. And thank you for everyone's patience. A few minutes getting going there and getting everyone connected, but great to have everyone on. So I suppose, first of all, myself, I'm Alan Mc Glinchey. I work on the Intercom startups team, building relationships with VC firms globally, as well as promoting Intercom amongst the startup ecosystem. So Bobby Stapleton, I'm going to ask you to go straight into an introduction, if that's okay.
Sounds great.
Great.
I can kick us off here. Hi, everybody. I'm Bobby Stapleton. I'm the director of our customer support for North America and Australia here at Intercom. Been here a little over 4.5 years and have the great pleasure of working with Bobby Pinero for a few overlap years at that time. So very excited to be here talking about Equals, talking about support ROI.
Fantastic. And Bobby Pinero, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, so please.
Awesome. Thank you. I used to get emails from that were intended for Bobby Stapleton because our emails were so similar. But no, I'm Bobby Pinero. I previously ran finance, analytics, biz ops, and a few other teams at Intercom. I was there for almost 8 years. Joined when it was 20 people, left when it was almost 700 people. And now I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Equals.
Fantastic. It'd be great, before we dig into the topic today, can you tell us a bit about Equals, why you started the business and the challenges you're addressing for your customers as well?
For sure, yeah. So my background is I've been an analyst for basically the last decade. Equals is really simply the tool that I wish had existed for myself in that time. And it starts with the really simple premise that the spreadsheet is actually the best way to work with data. As simple as it sounds, it's actually quite a differentiated view in the world. I've been quite frustrated over the past 10 years with all of the new data tools that have popped up, trying to take me out of the spreadsheet, trying to give me yet another way to build a dashboard, making me learn some other way of working, when almost always you're working with data, you have to do some manipulation of it. And the spreadsheet is really the best way to do so. And so Equals is really simply a next generation spreadsheet. And it's one that connects, it works just like Sheets in Excel. So if you know how to use Sheets in Excel, which most of us do, you already know how to use Equals. And then, we natively connect to your data warehouse, your database, and then other tools like Stripe, Salesforce, Intercom, et cetera, so that you can easily pull in your data, work with it, iterate on your analyses, update, automate updates, things like that. And so for startups, equals is simply the fastest way to do analysis.
Awesome. And it's a super tool. I've checked it out myself, and I'm no Excel or spreadsheet aficionado, but it's super intuitive and easy to use and get going with. So excited to see you starting to scale up the business at this stage, Bobby.
Appreciate it.
I suppose, we'll stick on as we get into our topic of support metrics with you, Bobby Pinero, for a minute. I'm not forgetting about you, Bobby Stapleton, but how have you looked at building your support function so far?
Oh, I think you might have cut out there. You said, how have you built your support function so far?
How have you built your support function so far, and what are you measuring at this stage on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. So, we're just getting started. Company Equals is a year and a half old. We're 11 people in total. So support is in the kind of infancies for us. And it's pretty wild when you get to start a company. You have to you're confronted with the struggles of every single function and building them all from the ground up. Yeah. But for us, I'm a believer in general, and we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but I'm a believer in keeping measurement simple. There's an infinite number of things that you can measure, and that can become really overwhelming if you're just trying to kind of keep track of everything. And I'm also a big believer, and this ties back to Intercom's mission of support being a proactive function, especially at our stage. So we need to help our users get successful with Equals. Support isn't just sitting back and waiting to hear what problems people are having with the product. Yeah. And so for us right now, there's two priorities at Equals. One is top of funnel related, but then the second is getting folks set up successfully on Equals, getting them activated so that they stay with us, so that they're long-term retained customers. And so when we think about building support, we're focused, entirely on that second priority, making sure that folks get set up successfully. So we have one person focused on this right now. And her kind of key metric right now is around activation. We know that if somebody starts with Equals and they run at least 5 queries, they're in a really great place. And so her job is to make sure we understand who's doing that, who's not done that, and then how do we get them to a place where they've run.
How did you settle on 5 queries? Like, where did you run some analysis on the customers that you did have and people coming in, or was it a guesstimate getting going?
A little bit of both. We're still so early that we can't do a ton of analysis, but sure. Yeah, we've seen basically that if folks run up to 5 queries, they're just much more likely to stay with Equals over the few months that we've had the product in the world.
Yeah, it's trying to build the habit and the recurring use. I saw an ad the other day, and this is a different sector altogether, but it was a t-shirt company saying that if you wore their t-shirt for 100 days in a row, that you'd get one for free. Like, I thought it was such a smart.
Not worth it.
Not worth it. Like, I hope they meant to wash the thing in the middle a few times, right? But
I'd love to know how many people did that.
Yeah. I thought they're trying to get people to create that habit, recurring. I get the marketing was smart around it. And look, I'm talking about it. I've forgotten the brand name, but as an example. That's super. Bobby Stapleton, like, as you think about newer support teams, or a team that's going through a level of change, or even earlier stage companies, like, as they're getting started, what are the kind of key support metrics they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think this may be obvious, but I think the first step is even just thinking about a support function. For my just exposure working with startups, early stage companies, it can be tempting to just guess, like Bobby said, there's just so many constraints and strapped resources. So it can be easy to keep putting off hiring that support person or adding to the support team. But we often hear about how that can pull time from your product engineers from actually building a product. As I'm sure for founders and whatnot, they have a multitude of competing priorities. And while having that direct hands-on interaction with your customers is important, there also reaches a time where it's hey, let's turn this over to someone that can really kind of specialize in it. So first off, it sounds obvious, but make sure you have you're thinking about having a support team earlier on than what you may need to do.
Yeah. And often, sometimes really early on, that could be a support person that's also doing onboarding and enablement. There's a wide whereas in Intercom at our stage, there's all sorts of teams working on these different things. But of course, you want more of a utility type individual at that stage, right?
Yeah, and I definitely would plus one what Bobby Pinero said just around that, around activation. Like I think that's a key one for early stage companies. And I think secondly, just like having to think about like, what do you want this experience to look like down the road? You know, customers want some level of consistency. And so if you start off with like, yeah, you can just call me at any time. And then 9 months down the road, like that's something we're like, hey, we're actually like, we're moving over to a support tool like Intercom or something else, like that can be a jarring experience. So I think like thinking about like some of the metrics in the customer experience, whether that's like your channels, whether that's like your first response time, that can like have a think about that, not just for the immediacy, but also, you know, a bit down the road as well.
Yeah. Like basic ones would be first response time, time to close a ticket, things like that, that you're trying to at least get a handle on the early side. Obviously things can be harder when you're working through product development as well in the background and everything else, right? And Bobby Pinero, like, how are you thinking about the kind of tools for your support team at the moment, and as you start into this next phase of scaling out your customer base?
Yeah, I mean, we're very happy Intercom customers, Intercom users. We've been from the very beginning. And, you know, Intercom's been just kind of adding such a breadth of features that I don't foresee having to kind of jump off of Intercom for quite some time. The experience that I want to create with Equals is one where it's not just kind of responding to customers and, you know, somebody writes in and gets their question answered, but it's, you know, I think a lot about how do we create a place where people can go where before they run into issues, or when they run into an issue, they've already got an email in their inbox from, you know, somebody on our team who's proactively trying to help them, or we're anticipating things, or, you know, it's a light and playful engagement. And it feels like people are part of something special, as opposed to it just feels like, you know, they're getting their kind of boxes checked. And so for me, you know, Intercom does that in a really magical way. So
fantastic.
Continue to use it.
And are you using product tours and some of the other features within Intercom, or is it mainly just kind of the support function?
We're using, we haven't yet fired up product tours, but we're using series. So series we're doing a lot of, campaigns out to folks in that way.
All right, awesome. I suppose, you know, we move to the next piece, thinking about as companies are starting to scale up, how they start to demonstrate the support ROI. Bobby Stapleton, like, how are you measuring the ROI of support teams at Intercom? How do we do that on an ongoing basis, or how do we think about it?
Yeah, I think, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is just looking at our customer experience metrics, and you can do some deep analysis or like A/B testing there to analyze like retention or expansion. But I think, you know, even at a high level, it's like it's understandable to use those customer experience metrics as a proxy for those other metrics. So looking at things like CSAT or NPS, there was a comment floating around the support world where a company called Loom, they're asking a CSAT question, as well as asking like, are you able to achieve more with our product after talking to our support team? So I definitely think that customer experience metric is a top one. We'll also look at like some adoption metrics like Bobby mentioned. And so, you know, our team is aware of those, and we have like some admin tooling to understand, like, you know, like, are there some of these product adoptions or indicators for deep usage? And if there's a way for us to kind of like, while we're answering your question, you know, share insight or to help you with those metrics as well, I think is another way that's like kind of proving the ROI by driving that deep usage and adoption.
Driving additional adoption from the conversations and the issues the customers are having, because oftentimes that can be, you know, not just Intercom, any tool, you may not know what the tool can do for you and for the problems you're trying to solve. So having support teams being able to enable folks is really strong. Bobby Pinero, like, I was looking at your pricing page the other day, and I noticed you have a self-serve motion that includes kind of standard support, and then your enterprise offering includes priority support. To me, I was impressed that a company, you know, already had that kind of in your pricing model, and we're thinking about it. How did you decide on this approach, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is it's just support as a revenue driver here. And so we know that our enterprise customers are when we've entered conversations with enterprise customers, and for the larger folks that we do have, it's just really important to them. It's important to them that they can have their issues resolved quickly, that they feel like they've got the support there when they need it. And so, it's kind of a no-brainer for us. It was one of the easiest things for us to differentiate on in the beginning without having to go and build, a host of other enterprise type features. So for us, it was a very obvious and quick and easy thing to do.
And is there practical challenges to that? The fact that all of a sudden you need to start thinking about 24-hour support, and maybe someone's covering the clock all the time, right?
We'll get there. Certainly, you're starting to make me think about some very real challenges. But I mean, the biggest challenges for us is just, keeping a list of who those enterprise customers are, knowing that we have, SLAs, commitments with them, and making sure that as they write in, we're fulfilling those commitments.
And within Intercom, can you tag them as premium customers and they get sent through a different workflow, etc., all that type of nice stuff?
For sure. Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. Bobby Stapleton, it'd be great if you could share a bit actually while we're talking about Intercom. What metrics does Intercom generate as a system, and then how can they be married with costs to understand the ROI?
Yeah, this is my quick Intercom pitch. As the engagement OS, there's a lot of different ways and different parts of the customer journey you can measure it. I'm going to answer this kind of through the support lens. And the first is all of our automation tooling. And so whether we have a resolution bot, you can train it to answer questions, as well as custom bot flows that can help do some of those early steps. We have some great reporting that in the product demonstrates time saved, and we have some metrics in there to use to kind of then demonstrate time saved equal then the money saved based off some support costs. So I think that's a big one. And then I think the other main thing that really comes through and with our reporting is just the whole suite of support metrics, again, whether that's first response time, average handling time to close, and then a big one as well is that team productivity. I think for support teams, a constant top of mind is capacity planning. And so it's how busy are we? How many people do we need? And Intercom, while we are not a workforce management tool, you can get all those metrics to kind of do that capacity planning for your team. So those are some big ones.
Yeah, I saw a recent profile on Amplitude saved $1 million, with automation using Intercom. That's a substantial money to be saving for a company. So I think the use of automation within the tool is super, super helpful, folks. And across the board for companies your size as well, Bobby, through to the Amplitudes of the world and others, right? I suppose, think back to your Bobby Pinero, think back to your kind of finance role at Intercom and managing the growth that Intercom had over those years and kind of continues to have. How sophisticated did you get with support metrics, and can you share any examples or learnings from that time or different stages there?
Yeah, for sure. So again, I said this in the beginning, kind of my bias with metrics in general is to keep things simple. And so again, too many metrics is confusing, and you end up trying to optimize too many things. And so as a finance person, thinking through the kind of scaling of Intercom, what we really cared about, or what I cared about, were our gross margin, right? So I cared about our gross margin as a company. Support fits into, right, our gross margin. It fits into our cost of goods sold. And so support needed to fit into what the gross margin benchmarks and targets were that we set for ourselves as a company, right? And those were derived from an understanding of where we needed to be in order to be a long-term, self-sustaining, profitable, appealing to investors company. Yeah. And so gross margin was the big thing that we were always looking at. And then the second thing that we kind of, the second metric that we kept as a guidepost was CSAT. CSAT needed to stay at or above 95%. That just wasn't something that we were willing to compromise on. We knew that a big part of Intercom's growth was, people having great experiences when they wrote into us. It's good for customers, but it's also the value prop of Intercom, right? And so we iterated a lot over the years on the design and the size of the support team with those two metrics, gross margin and CSAT, as kind of the guideposts. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the second thing another thing I'd say here is just as a finance person, the thing that we ultimately care about and the way that every SaaS business is measured is on, that LTV to CAC equation, right? Mm-hmm. It's how profitable are you in bringing in customers and supporting them and, acquiring and supporting them. And
what does a healthy LTV to CAC ratio look like for a company?
It depends on the stage, and the general benchmarks is like 3x LTV to CAC. But again, it depends on, are you early stage? Are you late stage? What type of motion do you have? What type of product do you sell? How sticky is your product? All those things.
Probably the industry you're in and things like that. It's definitely been companies over the years that have been trying to buy market share and probably tipping that in all sorts of strange ways, right?
Exactly. But so the thing that, if you're thinking about approaching your finance person as a support leader and you're saying, hey, okay, how do I advocate for more resources, or how do I advocate for my team to take on more? The thing that you need to always keep in the back of your mind is, how am I impacting that LTV to CAC equation? So, we've talked about, you might be able to drive up activation, and by driving up activation, that increases, retention, which then increases the lifetime value of any customer. Mm-hmm. How might you drive up, referrals or word of mouth growth because people are having great experiences with the product and they're willing to tell, their friends about it. Yeah. Or how might you drive, replace a higher cost resource with a lower cost resource, or some automation.
Automation, or putting in levels of self-service and things like that might remove some of your cost base.
Exactly.
A lot of sense. Super. Bobby Stapleton, as you're coming into kind of your next planning cycle and, our next planning cycle, should I say, where do you see the biggest opportunities for the support team? And what are you thinking of? How do we go to the next level, and how do we drive things from both generally and from a metrics point of view as well?
Yeah, it's wild that we're already doing planning for next year. But the few things that really stand out. The first that we're looking at on the support side is just doing a better job with customer insights. It's been a big year for us at Intercom with product launches, and on the support side, we just want to ensure that we're supporting and partnering with our really large teams now, like R&D and marketing, to make sure that we're kind of sharing that firsthand perspective as folks using Intercom every day, as well as what we're hearing from customers as a way to help improve the products as they're launching, thinking about the product release cycle, and just kind of incorporating those insights. So that's item number one. Item number two, as Bobby mentioned, definitely proactive support. Again, it's I think that is the future of support, and having something that's in context, in advance, and able to help clear those blockers before they pop up is a big one. We do that a little bit, but definitely have room to grow. And then lastly, I think just kind of continuing to scale. We're at this interesting point where, decisions that made sense 4 to 5 years ago aren't going to be the decisions that carry us forward. And we can become so busy and kind of ingrained that you might not pull your head up of the water to have to think about it. And that can be big structural things rethinking how we've done segmentation made sense before. I think we actually want to simplify now that we're a bit larger, to small things like our teams, individual snooze workflows, or our teams values, and kind of thinking about that for the road ahead. So 3 things. Yeah.
That's super. And you must always, being inside an organization that sells into so many support teams, you must be beta testing all sorts of things over the years with the team and being the guinea pigs for lots of projects. But it's a great way to kind of dog food anything out to the rest of the world, right?
Yes.
Great. I suppose we're going to move towards Q&A, but any advice for companies getting started, just high level from both of you? I think what I heard is, set your goalposts and have a few metrics that you really focus on. Is that kind of the essence of the conversation, or do you have anything to add?
On my end, that's really the main thing I'd drive home is kind of pick a couple key metrics that align to the priorities in your business and really focus on those. And they can change in a year or two, or they can change in 3 months if you're super early stage. but really focus on a small set of metrics that you can drive action against.
Super. Anything to add, Bobby Stapleton?
No, definitely +1. And yeah, like there's a lot of metrics, there's a lot of things you can look at, you can do in support, and yeah, like it's okay to prioritize. You don't have to have it all figured out immediately. So give yourself some grace with that too.
Sure. Okay. We have a few questions here on the Slido. One, our most popular one is, how are you linking these metrics to an ROI? So does anyone want to take that of how are we, I guess you talked about CSAT and others that were used as the key ones. How are you linking that to the actual ROI?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start here. So at least in the case of equals, for example, right? Like we're super early. I know that activation for me is going to drive, or I believe that activation is going to drive retention. And if activation is going to drive retention, then, you know, for me at this point, at this stage, I haven't done, it's not like I sat down and did like a hard in a spreadsheet calculation of, okay, if I can retain 5 more customers and I pay the support person this amount of money, this is going to be the ROI of it. But I know at a very high level that higher retention means I'm going to be able to grow faster, means I'm going to have more luck with, or a stronger business to present investors when I want to go out and raise a Series A. And it's the lifeblood of any SaaS business. And so for me, the ROI calculation it's critical. It's absolutely critical. And so that's kind of, you know, very genuinely how I've approached it. And then, you know, in the later days of Intercom, it was like very much down to the P&L. It's like, okay, well, we have an LTV calculation. We know what our COGS is. We know what our gross margin is. We can do we know what benchmarks are for LTV to CAC. We know what benchmarks are for gross margin. And so we need to get to a place where, you know, we feel like we're in a healthy place around those metrics.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose back to you, Bobby Stapleton, you know, that's from a finance mind. So thinking from the support part, no offense, Bobby Pinero, but think from the, you know, the support team's thinking, you know, the things that you can control, right? Because there's not everything you can control from the support team's point of view, but there are things around upselling, around activation, you know, making sure that the CSAT's high, response times. Like, are they the type of things that you would focus on mostly, or is there anything I'm missing there?
Yeah, like I do think there is like that commercial element, whether that's like having a paid support offering, or we also like we tag the conversations and then measure, like we tag and measure the conversations we pass over to like tee up and pass over to our sales team. So definitely some like direct / indirect like impacts on the commercial side, but otherwise I think you hit on some of the main ones. And again, like you can go and do some like deeper analysis of like, we've done like A/B testing between like what's the first response time for one group versus another, what does that do to CSAT, and then evaluating that you know, retention, expansion, contraction. So like you can do that type of analysis. But I would also even say, like, as a support leader, don't like, it's also okay to also like trust your gut and instinct, and like you should just be socializing, I think, to stakeholders in your company, like, hey, this is, you know, this is why support's important. Here's what we're seeing from the customers. And I think like if you're socializing that and kind of like constantly beating that drum, you can kind of pair that qualitative piece with the quantitative side as well.
Yeah, and I think where we've seen in recent months, you know, a readjustment of expectations within the tech market, and you know, all of a sudden everyone's like, let's focus more on retention, when that was always a focus, but it wasn't the number one thing. Whereas now, I think retention and support is hand in hand in what people need. I suppose the next question is from anonymous here. Thank you for writing in. What is a good retention rate for an application? If we have does anyone have broad benchmarks on what good retention looks like, or any indicators of that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, again, it'll depend on depend on the industry, the types of businesses that you're selling to. If you're selling to down market versus up market companies, things like that. But look, the gold standard for any SaaS business is to have everything comes back to net revenue retention, right? Net revenue retention is for every dollar you bring in, how many dollars do you have left? People measure it on a quarterly, but also on an annual basis. So for every dollar you bring in, how many dollars do you have left after a year? And that's net of people that churn, but also all of your upsells and your upselling contraction. And so you want that net revenue retention to be north of 1 or 100%. So for every dollar you bring in, you're at the end of the year, you have more than $1 from that same cohort. And then it varies again, depending on segment, industry, et cetera, for that net revenue retention over 100%.
P1. Oh, makes a lot of sense. We're coming up on time. I suppose any last any last points for the team here or for the guests we have today before I head towards closing?
Nothing on my end. Thanks for having us, Alan.
Thank you very much. I suppose my colleagues are going to share a few links in the chat and following on. So I would really encourage you to check out Equals. It's the fastest and simplest way for startups to do analysis. It's a super intuitive spreadsheet that connects to any database with modern versioning and collaboration. You can also connect Equals to any tool or API, including Intercom with JavaScript or Python. So please do check out Equals and support Bobby and the team here if you have any need for an awesome spreadsheet. Then as well, our early stage program, we have over 5,000 startups using us. So please, if you're an early stage company, go check out our landing page. Our colleagues will share it in the chat as well, and follow-up email. There's a 95% discount for early stage companies. And then secondly, for SME and mid-market, head over to our website and drop a message into the chat if you want to connect to our sales team to learn more. Finally, we have new at Intercom happening on October 12th. We have lots of cool announcements packed into that, so you'll also see a link to register to that as well. We'll be joined next month by Paystack and Kuda Bank, focused on scaling fintech support operations. So we'll look forward to that conversation. But Bobby from Equals, thank you very much for your time and your insights. Bobby Stapleton, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. And take care, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks all.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Alan. Bye.